The classic saying, never turn your back on the ocean, has never rung more true. Massive waves, turbulent currents, death-defying cliffs. Here are the top 15 most scary beaches on Earth. Number 15, Cairns Beach. The city of Cairns in northern Australia is exactly what you'd expect from a country where there's glorious weather, the people are friendly, and it has several stunning beaches. And if you visit during the summer, there's no doubt that you'll want to visit the coast to cool off in the water. Most visitors manage to do this without any trouble. But this region of Australia is also home to some of the most dangerous creatures in the world, and there's always a chance you might come face to face with one of them. Two of the world's deadliest snakes, the eastern brown and the death adder, can be found in the undergrowth around the beaches, and occasionally they may venture onto the sand in search of food. In the water, there's also the chance of encountering a deadly box jellyfish, a venomous blue-ringed octopus, various different shark species including great whites, tiger sharks, reef sharks, and hammerheads, and of course, saltwater crocodiles. It's one of the highest concentrations of deadly animals you'll find anywhere in the world. And you never know for sure when they will decide to visit the beach alongside all the tourists. Attacks are thankfully rare, but there's always a few people who have to seek urgent medical attention each year, meaning you'll always need to be aware of what's going on around you if you want to make sure that you aren't next. Number 14, New Smyrna Beach. Florida's New Smyrna Beach is in Volusia County and is one of the most popular places to go surfing in the country. There's a thriving water sports community there, with swimmers, scuba divers, surfers, and kite surfers often seen on the sands. But while the water might be appealing, you enter at your own risk, because New Smyrna Beach has the unfortunate honor of being known as the shark bite capital of the world. The reason for this is the unique coastal geography that means the waters are slightly warmer than elsewhere. Large shoals of baitfish tend to swim close in towards the shore. This attracts lots of different species of sharks, including great whites and spinners. And while they're there to hunt fish, they may take an occasional swipe at someone passing them in the water. In 2007, there were more confirmed shark bites in the county than any other place on Earth. And in 2008, there were 28 shark attacks on humans in a single season. This trend has continued in recent years too, with spats of attacks continually being reported. It's just unfortunate that none of these have resulted in any fatalities. Number 13, Praia do Norte. Praia do Norte, which translates to mean North Beach, is on the coast of the municipality of Nazaré in Portugal. The beach looks out over the Atlantic Ocean, and the waters are a refreshing way to cool off in the height of summer. But there's a danger here that attracts visitors from around the world. It has some of the highest and most powerful waves on Earth. The reason for this is the presence of a deep underwater crack in the ocean floor, known as the Nazaré Canyon, which plunges to a depth of at least 16,400 feet, and is relatively close in to the coast. This creates a constructive interference effect between the incoming swell waves. It causes them to grow much larger than you'll find anywhere else in Europe, and virtually any other spot on Earth. As you'd imagine, the beach is top of most surfers' bucket lists and holds regular competitions every year. The highest wave to be surfed there, and the current world record, was 80 feet between the trough and the crest, which is difficult enough to manage if you're on a board, but imagine what would happen if you were swimming in the water at the moment it made landfall. Number 12. Bikini Atoll. Bikini Atoll is a series of 23 islands on a coral reef around an almost 230 square mile lagoon in the Marshall Islands in the South Pacific. It's pretty much as close as you can get to the ideal tropical island, and was once home to a small community of people. But that all changed in 1946, when they were all relocated so the atoll could be used for a terrifying purpose, as the test site for nuclear weapons. Over the next decade, the US military detonated a total of 23 devices on the land and in the lagoon, to fully understand the effects of the weapons. As you'd expect, the long-term consequences can still be seen there today because of the huge destruction each bomb had on the environment. And there's one area where a concrete dome had to be installed to contain a large amount of the nuclear waste that had been left behind. Still, in the 70s, people were allowed to return to the atoll, but they were soon evacuated. After settling back into island life and taking full advantage of the perfect beaches, it was discovered that the sand and fresh water on the island still contained dangerously high levels of strontium-90 and cesium-137. Yeah, that's right, Bikini Atoll has radioactive beaches. Just a few hours lying in the sun will expose you to more radiation than having a series of X-rays at the hospital. Number 11, Fraser Island. Located around 160 miles north of Brisbane, Australia, Fraser Island is a protected nature reserve that's just off the coast of Queensland. Covering an area of 710 square miles, it's considered to be the largest sand island in the world. essentially meaning it's one huge beach, and it's covered with rainforests, woodlands, swamps, and shrubland. With such a perfect environment for wildlife to thrive, the island, which receives hundreds of thousands of visitors every year, isn't exactly the safest place to be. The waves in the area are quite powerful and even killed 2 tourists in 2009 when the vehicle they were camping in was overturned. But there's a lot more to be concerned about. It's home to a number of venomous species of snakes, saltwater crocodiles, and one of the largest wild populations of dingoes. It's these dogs that most people want the opportunity to see in their natural habitat. They become so accustomed to the presence of humans that they show very little fear and have been known to attack adults and children in defense of their territory. Number 10, Utaklev. Of all the stunning geological features that Norway has to offer, the beach at Utaklev is easily one of the most photographed because of the oddly shaped rocks and sand on the beach against the backdrop of the mountains. This is an unusual place in the world and a popular destination for tourists. Depending on the time of year, it can be a great place to see the northern lights. During the summer months, it's so far north that darkness never falls, and it's the perfect environment to witness the midnight sun. Of course, the air feels freezing on the beach, and very few people have the inclination to go into the water. This is a good thing, though, because it can drop in temperature to just a few degrees above freezing. If you were to go swimming there, you would begin to show the effects of hypothermia in just a matter of seconds or minutes. But by the time you realize you're in trouble, it could well be too late. The currents around the beach mean that you'll need your strength to get back to shore. And if your body is already burning calories to try to keep you warm, there's no way you'll make it. It's one of the most beautiful and potentially deadly beaches on Earth. And if you're fully prepared, there's no need to worry. Number 9, Sheerness Beach. The beaches around the Isle of Sheppey in the county of Kent in the UK appear to be just like any other in the country. They have rocky pebbles instead of sand, and the water's not always warm enough to be inviting. But still, on summer days, they'll become packed with visitors looking for an escape. One of the beaches, however, has a particularly unusual added feature, which makes it one of the most potentially dangerous beaches in the world. You'll notice something strange about Sheerness Beach as soon as you arrive, because the first sign you see is one that features an unhappy mermaid with her hand on a TNT detonation plunger. That's because around 1.5 miles out to sea is the wreck of the SS Richard Montgomery, a transport ship that was sunk during the Second World War and had at least 1,500 tons of high explosives on board at the time. The remains of the ship were so precarious after it sank that there was no way to remove the dangerous material, which means it's still there to this day and could suddenly detonate with very little warning. Amongst the cargo were 286 2,000-pound blockbuster bombs, 4,439 1,000-pound bombs, and most worryingly of all, 2,500 cluster bombs. The cluster bombs are of most concern because they would have been transported with their fuses in place, which means that any one of them could potentially trigger the entire payload to explode. To put this into context, a stash of this size would cause one of the most destructive non-nuclear explosions ever and would instantly obliterate anything that was on Sheerness Beach at the time. We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8, Anacappi Beach. There are a number of hidden dangers that you can encounter at a beach, but there's none so hidden as riptides, and they're responsible for hundreds of deaths around the world each year. These invisible killers are underwater currents that move in different directions to the ocean's surface, and if they're powerful enough, can drag people below the surface and they may never be seen again. One of the places where this effect is most dangerous is in the waters of Anacappi Beach in the Hawaiian island of Kauai. It's an incredibly beautiful place, and despite there being no official access road, it's a majorly popular site for visitors. This just increases the chance of something bad happening though, because the waves and riptides are some of the strongest on Earth. This happens because there's no coral reef offshore, and the water soon becomes very deep, which means currents can begin to swirl and there's nothing in the way to block them. Add to this the fact that the nearest safe shore is more than 6 miles away, and anyone who's pulled out to sea by the currents has very little chance of returning. Between 1970 and 2010, at least 30 people are confirmed to have drowned at the beach, 15 of whose bodies were never recovered. And there's a rather ominous welcome sign on arrival, with tally marks for all of those who have died, and it currently shows a number of 82, although the validity of this number is not known for certain. Number 7, Maho Beach. Most beaches in the world have currents or animals that you need to be aware of to remain safe. But there's one in the Caribbean that's potentially deadly because of a whole different reason. Maho Beach on the Dutch side of the island of St. Martin has become a popular destination in its own right, not because of its perfect sand or crystal clear warm water, even though it does have those, but because it's just beyond the perimeter fence of the island's airport, and aircraft fly perilously low to the ground on their approach to land. The arrival of each jet has become such a must-see event that the bar on the beach even has a monitor that shows when the next plane is due, and people gather for the chance to get up close to the downdraft as it passes over. It's one of the only places in the world where you can stand just underneath a passenger jet that's just 100 feet from the ground, and it's far from being safe. There are numerous signs to warn visitors of the dangers they may face, and it's quite common for debris to be blown around and cause injuries. In 2017, one visitor was killed when the jet blast of a flight blew her into a concrete slab, proving that the danger is absolutely real. Number 6. Gunsby. Gunsby is a coastal town in the Western Cape of South Africa, and while it's one of the most frequently visited tourist hotspots in the whole of the country, very few of these guests actually visit the beaches for a swim. That's because there's an island offshore that's home to one of the largest seal colonies on Earth, and where there are seals, there's usually great white shark trying to hunt them. In fact, that region of the ocean around Gunsby is where you'll find one of the densest populations of the man-eating sharks in the world. Most visitors go there for the chance to cage dive with the giant beasts. They don't always remain within the so-called shark alley near the seals, though, and will swim closer into shore, often being seen in the shallows around the local beaches. Thousands of people have died on this stretch of coast over the past few centuries, most of whom were sailors that fell into the water after their shipwrecked and didn't have any chance to get to shore before the sharks attacked. To this day, despite knowing about the risks, there are a few shark encounters every year on the beaches, although luckily these rarely prove to be fatal. Number 5. Playa Zipolite. Located on the Mexican coastline between Huatulco and Puerto Escondido, Playa Zipolite has become well known in the past few decades as being Mexico's only legal nude beach. But this newfound fame has meant that people often overlook the dangers that are present there, and the reasons why it gets its name, which translates to mean the beach of the dead. It had long been avoided by locals, and it was only when tourists began visiting in 1969 that people would regularly swim in the water. It's believed that communities used to use it to dispose of their dead, and they would offer the bodies to the ocean to bring good fortune upon them. There's probably an element of truth to this legend, but the water too has taken its fair share of victims as well. Because of the position on the coastline and the depth of the ocean just a few miles offshore, incredibly powerful riptides form that can drag people underwater with very little warning. There are numerous tales of swimmers vanishing without a trace, even when they had been standing with a group of friends. Drownings became so common that a volunteer lifeguard team was set up to try to protect people. Riptides can be so dangerous that the lifeguards don't even train in the water themselves, and instead use a local swimming pool. And while this hasn't significantly reduced the number of deaths each year, it hasn't completely eliminated them either. Number 4. Huntington Beach. Huntington Beach is a city in Orange County, California, and is a notoriously beautiful stretch of coastline that draws visitors from around the world who want to relax in the sun and cool off in the water. While this is normally perfectly trouble-free during most times of the year, especially as there's a well-trained lifeguard team to oversee everyone's safety, there's a possibility that the ocean will fill with an unexpected danger, and one that can prove to be deadly. That's because it's a natural habitat for stingrays, and is their historical breeding ground. During certain months, large swarms of the creatures will swim into the shallows of the coastline. When they come into contact with humans, the results can be painful. In 2019, over Labor Day weekend, lifeguards reported at least 300 people who had been stung by a stingray on the main beach at Huntington, and several others nearby, which was 3 times the number of the previous year. There's evidence to suggest that attacks are becoming more and more common, possibly a result of increasing water temperatures that bring them further into shore. And it's also because the number of people swimming in the water is increasing each year too. Luckily, there have been no recent fatalities, as the stingrays only sting as a last resort as a means of defense. But if incidents continue to increase, it's only a matter of time until something tragic happens. Number 3. Morecambe Bay. When you first see Morecambe Bay, it looks like any other beach, but this place is actually one of the most deadly beaches in all of Europe, and 21 people tragically died in just one night there in 2004. The bay was formed during the last ice age, where a receding glacier created a large flat area that, at the time, was still several feet above sea level. 5 major rivers drain into the bay before the water flows out to sea, and it now becomes completely flooded during high tide, and it's the combination of these that make it so dangerous. The tides are extremely fast-moving, so if you're out on the flats when the water starts moving in, it's probably already too late and you're going to have to prepare for a swim to shore. This isn't always possible though, because the constant flow of water into the bay means that there are large areas of quicksand which can easily trap someone for long enough to be drowned beneath the approaching tide. It's exactly what happened to the group of cockle pickers in 2004 who were on the sand overnight to collect seafood, but became stuck when the tide started coming in. Warnings are now present across the bay to prevent a similar tragedy from ever happening again. But you'll often see people venturing out from the beach onto the sand of the bay during low tide, and every one of them could find themselves in a similar predicament. Number 2, Baker Beach. Baker Beach is on the shore of the Pacific Ocean on the peninsula of San Francisco, and from it you can see glorious views of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was the original location of the Burning Man Art Festival until 1990 before it moved to Nevada, and as a result there are strict limits on beach fires on the sand. As it's relatively secluded in comparison to other nearby public beaches, it's also considered to be a nude beach with lots of clothing-optional sunbathers. But there's more to be scared of here than the risk of sunburn on your delicate parts. Baker Beach is also known for being one of the most haunted beaches in the whole of the US. And once the sun goes down, it takes on a wholly different vibe. With the restriction on fires, there's very little to light up the area, and this makes the presence of ghosts all the more creepy. The most famous apparition, according to countless stories from visitors, is a mysterious woman who stands in the water and sings an eerie song. It's said that her voice has a hypnotic power, and that similar to the sirens, anyone who hears the song is compelled to walk into the waters and may never be seen again. Number 1, Cape Tribulation. Cape Tribulation offers some of the most stunning and serene beaches you'll find anywhere in the world, and it's no surprise that large numbers of tourists visit each year. With the incredible sands and ancient rainforests and mangroves, you might feel like you're in paradise, but unfortunately, there's danger at every turn. The first thing to be wary of is the plant life. There are 2 species in particular to avoid at all costs. The first, the stinging tree, looks like any other fruit tree, but if you touch it, you'll get thousands of glass-like shards penetrating your skin, which will cause huge amounts of pain for days. Worse still is if you're unlucky enough to breathe in the shards, because this could quite easily kill you. Next is an incredibly sticky type of bush that has long vines, and if you touch one, it could take hours to free yourself from. There are stories of horse riders brushing against them as they pass, being left hanging in the air until someone comes to their rescue. So these are definitely ones to avoid too, if you want a relaxed day at the beach. Then there are the animals, and Cape Tribulation has quite a few that you'd do best to avoid. At certain times of year, the water can become full of thousands of box jellyfish that are almost impossible to see and can kill you in a matter of minutes. But even if you decide to stay away from them and keep on land, you still might have to contend with a saltwater crocodile, a species that are linked with 1 or 2 deaths in Australia each year, and also ravenous wild boars, which are more aggressive and dangerous than you might initially think. Cape Tribulation is definitely worth the visit, but with so many threats, you'd do best to keep your wits about you at all